I was, and I'll probably get teary now. I was crying in the interview. So this interview was with a guy called Shawn from Australia, and he's blind, or he was blind. But since he's been on Carnivore, his vision's coming back. And the thing that made me cry in the interview about it was,
today I'm grateful, thankful, and blessed to have Dave Mack on the channel sharing his amazing carnivore story and also sharing some incredible stories, as you saw there in the intro, from individuals he's interviewed on his channel. Dave has interviewed hundreds of carnivores, and he's just a really good guy. He's doing some amazing work. I encourage everyone to go check out his channel, link in the description below. Now let's get started. Let's just start it off. I'm going to start it off the way Dave Mack starts it off. I love how you start your interviews.
Brittany, how did you find it? How did you find Carnivore? How did you find Jim? How did you find Carnivore? Alex, how did you find Carnivore?
Dave, it's a great question.
Tell me how you found Carnivore.
thanks very much for having me on, Kerry. So it's been a really long journey. I've always been a carb addict. When I was a kid, I could easily polish off half a loaf of bread in one sitting. And I don't know what it's called in the States, maybe like Wonder White or something. You know, there's massive white loaves of bread. I could eat half of those and I would feel awful afterwards. Like I'd have this, lump in my stomach, but that was satiated to me, So as I was growing up, I always had this feeling of like, this is what satiation is, feeling this almost pain in your stomach, and feeling like your button's going to burst on your pants. And so the food that we ate at home was pretty normal, what the average family would probably eat. We had cereal for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, meat and veg for dinner. But I always had this carb addiction. And coupled with this, I also got a bit of an addiction to alcohol, which started at the age of 15. So at 15, I worked part-time at McDonald's, and I got invited to a manager's party one night. And at that party, I was introduced to alcohol for the first time. And I realized this helps me with the social anxiety that I've always been suffering with. I've always been like this, wallflower that stood back and never would interact with people, and always wait for other people to approach me. And suddenly all the inhibitions were gone after 2 cans. I was like, I was out there. And so, fast forward to, a couple of years ago, and the alcohol had become a crutch. The carbs had been a crutch all my life as well. And I'm sitting in the doctor's office in June 2022, and the doctor says to me, okay, well, you're pre-diabetic and you need to stop drinking alcohol. This is just out of control. And that kind of hit me. I knew I had an alcohol problem. I knew that I should stop eating all the sugar and stuff, but I didn't. Hearing it from someone else, especially a doctor, was that hit me really hard. And so he prioritized the alcohol as the issue first. And he said, we need to do something about the alcohol. And he was going to put me on this medication, which made you really sick if you drank alcohol, so it's like this, like kind of, don't touch the buzzer because you're going to get an electric shock kind of thing. And the side effects of this, which also included death, were not things that I particularly wanted to experience. So I said, look, can you give me some time? Let me try and take care of this myself. And I knew that I had to get back some self-control. And I'd done things like Atkins and keto in the past, and I knew that would give me self-control. So I thought, well, maybe if I can just go on keto, I can kick obviously, if I'm keto, I'm kicking the addiction to sugar, but maybe that can also, with a self-control, can help me with alcohol. And so, I tried keto, and that worked, but, I had some other issues with keto, that made me kind of fall into carnivore. And, there was no intention to ever do carnivore. I'd heard about carnivore before, but I'd always kinda gone, "Oh, yeah, well," even as someone who's done keto in the past, that's kind of a bit weird for me.
Hmm.
Sounds a little bit too extreme, but yeah, because of some of the vegetables I was eating when I was doing keto, I was having some gastric problems. I found some videos, and they were saying, well, the vegetables that you're eating are actually some of the worst for that. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just try and cut it out and see what happens. And you know, the rest is history. I've been carnivore
So how long has that been?
since June 2022.
Wow.
So it's coming up on 20 months.
It's pretty incredible you quit alcohol and sugar addiction. That's like the double whammy at the same time.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be able to. And most of the credit goes to keto, and by extension carnivore. But the other thing that helped me was changing everything about my life at the same time. And I think that helped me kind of reinforce that self-control that I was getting from having a low to no carb diet. And, yeah, I changed all my habits. I stopped walking past anything that would give me, um, anything that would trigger a craving. I changed routines so that, previously the alcohol was this crutch that if I was having a bad day, I would be thinking, "It's okay. Don't worry about it. Just think about opening that beer on the train on the way home." And, um, yeah, so I had to get out of a lot of sort of habits and kind of autopilot things I was doing to get over it as well.
Yeah, because it seems like there's a lot of people out there. You got kind of two groups of people, but some that would be like, I'm going to start this carnivore, but I'm going to keep coffee. There's no way I'm quitting coffee and doing carnivore, doing this. Then there's other people. You sound kind of more like me with your example of eating the half a loaf of bread at a time and things like that, that just can't moderate, where it's just easier. Like, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop sugar. I'm going to change my whole life. And I can't have, it's like you have a switch instead of a dial. You can't dial it down a little bit. It's either on or off. Does that sound about right?
100%. Like when I was 15 years old, I also started smoking. And, everyone, McDonald's was a bad influence. Everyone around my age that worked at McDonald's was a smoker. And so I started smoking, and, it couldn't just be one or two during the day. It had to be one every single time I had a break from anything I was doing. And then it becomes like one thing that you have to do while you're concentrating on something to help you concentrate, and it just builds on itself until it's basically the cigarette's always in your hand, or the drink's always in your hand, or the
Mm.
sugar's always in your hand. And yeah, you either you're a smoker or you're not, you're a drinker or you're not, you're a sugar addict or you're not.
I think we're very similar in that regard. It's kinda interesting. I guess it's not that uncommon, but, at 15, I was working at McDonald's too. Um, I didn't smoke though, but yeah, I couldn't moderate anything. I wouldn't moderate anything I would do, not just the food, but everything else in my life. But,
Mm.
where did you grow up, Dave? Because I know you're in Japan now, right?
Mm. So I've been in Japan for it's coming up on 18 years now, but
Wow.
I grew up in Australia, Melbourne, Australia. And I was born in Scotland. So grew up in Australia, but I got the accent, but didn't get the suntan.
Right.
So the lack of suntan is due to my Scottish roots.
Nice. So you've been all over the place.
Hmm. Yeah.
Do you feel like, in it's almost like a blessing that you can't moderate. I don't know. I guess this is kind of a question and kind of an assumption, but it seems like people like myself and yourself that can't moderate or have a dial. Carnivore is maybe in some ways a little bit easier because it's like I'm either all in or I'm not in at all kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think it is. And one of the things that I notice is a lot of people that end up being carnivore and can stay the distance on carnivore are the people that say, I just jumped in. I just went in cold turkey. Now, I'm not recommending that. A lot of doctors will say, transition in, and that's probably the best way to do it to avoid issues. But a, a lot of the people that can kind of stay the distance, they don't seem to be moderators. It's just I'm either carnivore or I'm not. I'm either this or I'm not, and it's just I've got to do it. I've got to go in all the way and commit. And if I do that, then I can stick with it.
Mm.
Mm.
What were some things you noticed? Obviously, quitting drinking is quitting drinking and sugar is like that's enough for most people. But what are some other things that you started noticing on your carnivore journey?
Um, uh, as far as things that have improved, um, so I mean, the first thing I noticed is improvements with sleep, and I think that seems to be anytime you improve your diet, one of the first things that gets better is your sleep. Like recently I've given up coffee and the sleep improved more, but I've done that in the past. And when you get the coffee out, your sleep improves. When you cut the sugar out, your sleep improves. So that improved very quickly. And then other things started to happen, like of course, energy gets better, and you're thinking more clearly. But for me, the thing about thinking clearly that improved most was I was able to step back and actually look, kind of bring myself out of situations that I was normally kind of right in the middle of and kind of fighting about. And like, I've got a stake in this. I need to know like a work thing, a work dispute or something. And it's like, you've got to do it my way. And now I'm more able to kind of step back and go, does this really matter? you know, in the grand scheme of things, why is this so important? And even if I win this in 5 years, 10 years, or whatever, when I've left this organization, who's ever going to remember me? Who's ever going to care that I was right about this thing? So that kind of clarity came back. But big things that really changed. There's kind of weight loss is something. So about 34 pounds down, and I've been able to maintain that for the almost 20 months. But the three big things really for me were arthritis just disappeared.
Mm.
I had painful arthritis in my left knee, and that just went. And I had always thought that, well, once you get arthritis, you're stuck with it. It's just like you've worn out your joint too much, and that's it. It's just that's the way it is, you know. So I thought I was stuck with this for the rest of my life, and this was almost like the start of feeling like things are just falling apart now. It's just a downward slide to the bottom, and so that disappeared, and then the other thing that disappeared was, or didn't disappear, started to improve, was my right side where I've had a stroke. So when I was 17, I had a stroke, and that left me with a weaker right side. I limp when I walk, and my right eye is lazier than my left eye, that kind of thing. And so when I started doing carnivore, or maybe, you know, 2 months into doing carnivore, I noticed that I wasn't limping as much. I noticed that I had more strength in my right hand. I noticed that, I just everything about, um, my right side that had been weaker wasn't as present anymore. And so you can imagine I had awful arthritis in my left knee. I was limping with my right leg. So, like, before Carnivore, it was comical watching me walk down the street. It was, like, exhausting, and now that's all gone.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, the number 3 thing really is gum disease. That's just disappeared as well. So, I had bleeding gums, sensitive teeth and gums, awful bad breath. I'd talk to my wife up close, my wife would go like this. That doesn't happen anymore, and that was one of these things I just noticed. I said to my wife, "You don't kind of recoil when I talk to you anymore, do you?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right." So, it's been awesome.
That's incredible. So I had some similar things like with the gums, and I learned that was from inflammation. I went into a dentist appointment and they said first place they see inflammation is in your gums. So you had arthritis, and anytime there's itis, that's also inflammation. So that helped with those two. Do you know for the stroke, was it reduction in inflammation, or is there some other mechanism that would have helped you do better with the stroke symptoms?
So I talked to Dr. Chafee about this after an interview we did, and, he was saying that it's perhaps something to do with the myelin sheath, able to repair itself better now or something like that. I
Mm.
don't know the exact terms they use, but it's something to do with the myelin sheath.
It's so funny you say that. I had a call with him a long time ago, and I think I was on day 60 or something of Carnivore. He's like, "It's just gonna get better," and I was like, I feel so good. How could it?" And he said something about the myelin sheath too. It was
Mm.
mitochondria regenerating after a certain number of years or something like that. And yeah, I did a little more research after that. It's some pretty incredible stuff. But it's so interesting. I had 7 years ago. I had a TIA mini stroke, but I didn't have any permanent damage like you. Um, but my friend Adam, he had a traumatic brain injury, which from a car accident, and he had vertigo and some issues like that. And amazingly, similar to what you're saying with Carnivore, a lot of that's completely cleared up for him. So it's remarkable. You start hearing more, and you've probably heard so many with all the interviews you've done, but you start hearing more and more. You're like, really, Carnivore, Carnivore traumatic
Uh,
brain injury? Like, how's that possible?
right, it gets to the point where you start to feel like you're selling snake oil or something, right?
Right,
Because people are like, "Nothing works this well. Nothing can do this." And, the saving grace that you have is saying, I'm not charging anything for this. This is
right,
free information,
right.
You go and do it. You don't have to buy anything from me."
Right, and the other part too is it's just like, if you don't believe me, I don't care. Just go watch one of Dr. Barry's video or look somewhere else online, and you'll hear 100 other people saying the same thing. Like, it
Mm,
really is remarkable with Carnivore, the number of people uh, seem to have such good success with it. I feel like it's just because it's kind of normal and what's natural.
mm,
Everything else, like when I was doing keto, you mentioned you did keto and you had some problems with the vegetables. I did keto and it touched my biggest symptom was depression, and anxiety for years and years. And when I did keto, it was the only thing that touched it. I was on every SSRI antidepressant, but keto helped, but it never did like Carnivore did. Um, yeah, and it never felt natural either. When I was doing keto, I'm like trying to count the carbs and trying to calculate things out. Carnivore, I don't think about anything. I just eat till I'm full and I don't have to really worry about anything. It seems so much more natural.
it's almost like, your body whenever you consume any carbs, your body is so busy managing that and controlling that and trying to avoid the more inflammation being caused that it can't just cope with the daily running of things, something
I
like that.
I am so happy you said that. I was just talking to my buddy Adam about this the other day. And because one of the biggest things for me on Carnivore is the brain fog being gone. I hear that from a lot of people. And I feel like I think exactly what you just said is so true. Most of humanity right now is on the standard American diet. They're not putting the proper fuel in their brain or their body. The brain takes an incredible amount of energy. So it's always at this deficit. It's almost like an impairment. I feel like that's what I was like before, probably like if I was intoxicated. Like I'm operating on just a lower level because my body can barely keep up. But then if you think about that for most of humanity being like that right now that's eating the standard American diet, it's such a shame. It's like
Mm,
and now I realize too, like now I'm more outgoing. And you mentioned social inhibitions. I was totally the same way. I would have dreaded having this conversation with you. Now I look forward to it, but I think it was because before my brain was just like, dude, give me a break. It's like, I'm trying to process all this garbage and sugar and inflammation you're putting in the body. I don't have time to try to build relationships or talk to other people, or it's just barely enough to get by kind of thing.
Right.
That's kind of like with the documentary, we're calling it Healing Humanity, the Power of a Proper Human Diet, because healing humanity has so many different meanings, but I think that's a big one. And just imagining a world where everybody didn't have that deficit, not just curing depression and anxiety or losing weight, but just not having that impairment of the standard American diet. I think the world would be just such a better place.
And look, yeah, this all makes sense when you look at the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom doesn't worry about measuring things. The animal kingdom doesn't worry about, should I eat this, or oh, is this balanced enough? And
Right.
oh, is that? But that's I haven't really eaten much of the rainbow this week, and they just eat their food, and then they sleep, or they run and catch more food, or they do whatever they're doing. Right? It's only us that think we're smart enough to design our own food. It's crazy.
It is us big brained humans, the most intelligent species on the planet, and we screw it up so bad. You're absolutely right. And on top of it, not just screwing it up for like weight loss purposes, but all the chronic diseases it's causing us. It's just crazy. Yeah, you look at animals in the wild and they're just fine. I always
Yeah.
use that analogy. Dr. Chafee used it once, but I live in the woods. We have a lot of deer, and I'm like, if you saw a deer out there in the wild and its belly was dragging in the dirt and its fur was falling off and it had bags under its eyes, if it was hobbling along because it was all arthritic, you'd be like, "Oh my goodness, what's wrong with that poor animal? There's something wrong. It's sick. There's a
What's
disease." But
what's it eaten?
yes, yes. Eh, but you go to the grocery store, you go out in public, and almost every human you look like is like that. It's just become the new normal. That's just the way it is. It's fine. But yeah, if you fed the deer the animals that the food that I used to eat, the Doritos and the Mountain Dew and the ice cream, it would end up looking like that. Its stomach would be hanging down. It'd get all of those things. Yeah. It's well, one question I had. So you mentioned social inhibitions before, and that was kind of a reason for drinking. Is that something that you no longer have on carnivore? Or in other words, do you think that part of your social inhibitions was caused by the foods you were eating before?
I think it probably played a role. I think there's a lot of things that probably contributed to that as when I was a child. But yeah, I think the carbs definitely would have played a role. I think now I'm definitely not as anxious in social situations as I was, but it's still there.
Hmm.
You know, and honestly, I'll give you a perfect example. Recently, I attended Low Carb Down Under in October, and I was still I was a little bit like I didn't know anyone there, and so I was still a little bit kind of holding back and a little bit hesitant to go and just introduce myself to people and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Blah blah blah, and also, I I'm at risk of also putting my foot in it when I'm in Australia because I haven't lived in Australia for so long. Things have changed a lot culturally that I haven't kept up with. So I could say something that I think was perfectly okay 18 years ago and is not now. So I also hang back because of that. Um, and so I would just kind of hang back and go, "Oh, what's the next session? Oh, okay, that's fine." And then I noticed people were starting to come up to me because some people recognized me from my channel, and it was like, "Oh, okay, this is pretty cool." But yeah, I mean, even now, that social anxiety exists to some degree.
Right. Are you going to any other conferences? Just out of curiosity, I'm going to a bunch of us are going to KetoCon in Austin. That's probably quite a track for you, but
I would love to get over to something like that because I feel like, coming to the States to go to one of those meetups would be great, but at the moment, it's a bit, out of budget to get there, so, yeah.
right. So you mentioned a little bit earlier your wife. Like, what about your wife, your family, friends? Do they all probably think you were kind of crazy doing this carnivore diet?
Um, I think it's probably mixed. Like, my wife's a nurse, so, I'm unlike and she's also Japanese, and I think for both of those reasons, and I can explain the Japanese part if you like in a moment, but, um those two components would make it very difficult for her to become a carnivore. However, she's supportive because she sees how well I'm doing. For friends, it's probably a mixed bag. There's probably people like, oh, hang on, he's gone all woo woo and weird and stuff. He's gonna be rubbing, chamomile tea into his earlobes in a minute or something. And then there's other people that like, well, great, it's working. That's fantastic. I've had people reach out to me and go, look, when I've seen a photo of me on Facebook, what are you doing? And I've explained and stuff. And then I think some people are like, oh yeah, but it wouldn't work for me. Or there's other people that are like, oh yeah, it sounds great. Sounds great. And they're virtually backing away.
That's awesome. So you've been doing it for a while now. Has there been any big epiphany or any big challenges? Because we always talk about it's so easy, it's so great, it's so wonderful. Have you had any big roadblocks or stumbling points?
I haven't, and I think that goes back to a point that we talked about before, which was um, the all or nothing mentality. And I think the fact that I've been kind of all or nothing about everything is all or nothing about everything is is what's helped me,
Hmm.
because it's like I know that if I don't know, I see some ice cream and go, oh, that'd be really nice, and I have some ice cream, or I have some keto ice cream, or whatever it is. It's just a downhill slide for me.
Hmm.
I can't stop at that one thing. So because I have to abstain, I think that's helped me.
Yep. Very similar. I'm the same way. And when I did keto, man, those stupid keto treats and snacks. I hate those things. When I go up, when I'm at Costco or the grocery store getting groceries, I walk by them. I'm like, it's such a people are trying so hard if they're on keto, and then they see one of those boxes that says keto on the side, and it's full of seed oils and artificial sweeteners. And every time I'd have one of those, I just feel like garbage afterwards. And I'm like, it says keto on it. I'm doing so good. I deserve a treat, but it's so disingenuous.
Hmm.
Led me down a wrong
Definitely.
path many times. But
Yeah.
so I want to shout out your channel some more. I really love what you're doing. I think we talked about this a little bit before, but there's it's a social norm, like standard American diet, eating junk food. Most of humanity is kind of sick, but that's just the way it is. There's nothing we can do about it. I'm sure sugar's just fine, but I really believe the way we're going to change that is sharing the stories, documented stories from other people. The documentary we're doing, we're not like do carnivore. It works. Trust me. It's just, no, look at all these examples from individuals. This is their story. Take from it whatever you will, sort of thing. And so
Mm.
elevating those voices, I think, is what's going to change things for, I guess, humanity as a whole. But I love what you're doing. Anyone that's watching, well, this is going to be on my channel. I think we're doing a live stream right now, but I'll have a link for Dave's channel below. Go subscribe, check it out. I think you were one of the first people that interviewed me, and it was a lot of fun. But I've been watching your channel ever since, and how many interviews do you even know at this point? Like how many people you've interviewed in terms of carnivore diet?
I think it's less than 200, but it's getting up to 200, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been awesome. But the best thing about it is it's become a labor of love. And you get to meet so many awesome people that you would never ever have had the chance to meet before. It's great.
That's wonderful. What what are some more like do you remember like the first one you did? Like how does it even come? How do you get the first one?
The very, very first one I actually did. So it kind of went like this. Like the very first interview I did was Amanda from Carnivorous Me and I collaborated. We did like interview each other, and that was very like we laid out the questions and all that. So my interview style has changed a lot since then. Like I don't go in with any questions at all now. I just have a standard question: how did you find carnivore?
Nice.
And then whichever way it goes, that's the way we follow. Um, but so I think there was Amanda and then Rick, Rick, the 40-year carnivore.
Yeah.
And so and that was also that just Rick's interview just blew up. and like everyone, and it just went crazy. And after that, I was kind of like, oh, this is pretty interesting. I kind of like doing this, or maybe at that time it wasn't. I kind of like doing this because I was still quite nervous about interviewing people, but it was more like I think I like the interaction part of it. I like, and so it just kind of built up from there. And then I put a video out saying, look, I've done a few interviews. Um, if you'd like to come on and share your story, please do. And I got a lot of emails, and so yeah, I've been working through it since then.
Did Rick mention anything about eating iguanas on that first one?
Yeah, and that's one of the things. If I ever get to the States, I'm going to Florida because I want to try an iguana with him.
Yeah, likewise. It seems like every video he's on, he's talking about it. He's awesome. That's an incredible story too. I I interviewed for the documentary Maggie, who I think is maybe the only other person that's gone longer than Rick. She's been carnivore for 65 years. She's 82 years old now. And the picture of good health, no mental health issues, no aches and pains, no ailments whatsoever, never had any chronic diseases or illnesses or anything. She put me and Adam to shame. We filmed her for a week and we couldn't keep up with her. She's building fences and jumping over fences. At one point, she had, like a big 5-gallon bucket of animal feed. She had 4 of them, 2 in each hand. At 82, I could barely pick them up, but she's picking up and walking them across the field like it's nothing. It's crazy.
And it's amazing when you think, like, for the regular SAD dieter, if we're looking at an 82-year-old who's just able to walk upright or ride a bicycle or something, you go, I want to be like that when I'm 82.
Yeah.
But then you see someone like Maggie who's like working like a 20-year-old at 82, and it's like, how is this possible?
Yeah. It's crazy. The interesting thing, Dave, is she's not like Amish, but she doesn't have a TV. She didn't leave very much. And one of the most frustrating things when we were interviewing her, and it was wonderful, the whole experience was wonderful, but the frustrating thing was she's like, I don't understand what such a fuss is. Like, everyone should be like this. And I'm like, Maggie, the average life expectancy in the US is 75. You're 7 years older than that. And all 75-year-olds that I know, a lot of them are in nursing homes or in wheelchairs. They're bent over, and she just couldn't wrap her brain, or she couldn't understand it at all. It's actually kind of sad because she's like, why would it be that way? I'm like, because they're eating processed foods and sugar, and they've been doing it their whole life chronically, and a lot of them end up with cancer and other ailments and issues. But yeah, she was one of the more remarkable people. So out of all the people you've talked to, is there one that really sticks out as a sort of remarkable conversation or transformation?
Well, every story has been good, has been awesome in a particular way. But I was having a think about this beforehand, and there's really 2 stories. One of them is a collective one that that I wanted to talk about. And the first one sticks to my mind because I was and I'll probably get teary now. I was crying in the interview. So this interview was with a guy called Shawn from Australia, and he's blind, or he was blind. But since he's been on carnivore, his vision's coming back. And the thing that made me cry in the interview about it was that he said at first he noticed that after being on carnivore, the first thing he noticed was he was suddenly able to make out the colors on his iPhone better, and the picture looked sharper. And it's just gradually getting sharper and sharper and more colorful. And so this is amazing. And then what made me cry was he talked about how soon after that he was out walking with his daughter. He was taking the dog for a walk, and he realized he could see her face for the first time in about 10 years.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So
Give me goosebumps. I'm going to start bawling now too. Carnivores don't cry, Dave. Come on. I'm crying all the time as a carnivore. I don't know what it is, but that's a beautiful thing. My goodness. Wow.
Yeah. And the second is the collective one is I've interviewed people with MS,
Mm.
and on Carnivore, people are seeing improvements with multiple sclerosis, even their brain lesions disappearing. And like one gentleman I interviewed, he had an MRI with he had a brain lesion on his MRI. He had been on Carnivore. He went for an MRI in a stronger MRI machine, like a more accurate MRI machine, and there was no brain lesion there the second time.
Mm.
And when I say this is collective, this is not one or two people. I've done 5 interviews with people who are all reporting the same thing, and many other people are commenting on it, saying, "Yeah, I've got MS and I'm getting better." It's so that is the other thing that stands out to me, because my whole life I've thought like, well, MS is just something you get and it gets worse, and well, there's nothing anyone can do about it. The best they can do is just try and manage the symptoms.
Mm.
But it seems Carnivore has an impact.
I don't know if maybe you interviewed her. If not, I'll gladly send her your way. But literally just before this call with you, I had a live stream with Emily Penton, and I interviewed her before. She had bipolar and MS, both reversed on Carnivore. I think I was crying listening to her story because that was so incredible. I thought the same thing as you, Dave. I'm like, you get MS, that's it. You got it. It's gone. But you hear this over and over again. I started hearing recently too from more people with autism, being able to drastically reduce the symptoms they're having of autism too. It's just incredible.
Mm. It really seems to be if there's some kind of condition you're dealing with that's just not getting any better, try Carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, because everything else just seems to be at best trying to manage it, whether it's medication or whatever. It's just managing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I always tell people too, it's like the thought of starting Carnivore for me now, it's like this is the easiest thing in the world. It was very hard to wrap my brain around it and do it, but now it's so easy. That's why it's frustrating when you see people suffer. You're like, just try Carnivore. But I get it. Like for anyone watching that thinks you're just eating meat, that's crazy. One way to do it though is if you're suffering or having issues, is you just say, I'm just going to do a simple elimination diet for 30 days. Tell yourself at day 31, you can go eat birthday cake and you can have apples and fruit or whatever, but give yourself 30 days. I'd suggest maybe 60 days, but approach it that way. I'm not going to only eat meat for the rest of my life. That's hard to grasp, but I'm going to do an elimination diet and eliminate sugar and seed oils and artificial flavors and stuff we can't even pronounce. Like who can't get behind that? And I'll tell you what, like I can't find anyone that's done that. And then they're like, nope, like nothing didn't help me at all. It's
Yeah.
just like universally the results are just incredible.
I hate this feeling good. I'm going back to eating my regular diet of hamburgers and pizza. They're
Right.
not going to do it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't check out Dave Mack's channel, everyone. That's some incredible stuff. Man, give me goosebumps with that first one. I interviewed the sightless carnivores. I don't know if you've had them on your channel or not. They're
I
both
know.
blind. He was blind since birth. And sadly, his wife, her name is Amy. It's Amy and Shane. Amy, she became, this is going to tear me up. She became blind because of type 2 diabetes from the food she was eating. Literally, the food she was eating caused her to lose her sight, which is, I believe that's what she told me in the first time I interviewed her, which was just so heartbreaking to think, wow, the food you eat could make someone blind. And yeah, it happens all the time. My cousin lost half of his foot's amputated because of diabetes, and people lose limbs and things like that all the time. But yeah, you know, it's interesting because I was kind of asking her that. I'm like, this is a crazy question, but I wonder if her vision could improve if the inflammation goes down. I don't know. She wasn't sure either, but what she did know was she wasn't doing it because she was blind. She was doing it because it made her feel incredible. She felt so much better with energy and
Mm.
inflammation gone. But the big, not to swap stories that are going to make us both start crying, but the one that really got me is, like, I knew a lot of this stuff. The MS, I didn't learn about that till more recently and things like that. But I knew about IBS, and you can reverse type 2 diabetes. That was kind of incredible to me because I have a lot of family members with type 2 diabetes. Foolishly, before I thought that was permanent. Now it's like, no, everyone that does carnivore, they pretty much reverse type 2 diabetes. The one that was a big eye opener for me, Dave, was cancer. And so we're filming my friend Jeff DeProsperous. He's on a journey to be cancer free, but he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he was told, "You're inoperable, you're incurable, you're palliative, you've got a couple months left to live." And he's not saying, I'm not saying you do carnivore and your cancer goes away, but what he is saying definitively, and he's frankly pissed off about the fact that other people don't know about this. I mean, everyone that's getting diagnosed with cancer, but eating the proper human diet, doing metabolic therapy during chemo treatments is a game changer. We went to film him for a week. It was like Maggie. I couldn't keep up with him. He's like, I feel like I'm 20 years old. He'll fast for 5 days in a row, do chemo in the middle. Chemo knocks most people out. On like the day after, 2 days after chemo, he was running around with us. He was working as a gym teacher, running around the gym, taking his kids to school projects, and doing all of this stuff. And he's like, Carrie, I have more energy now than I ever have before. He started the chemotherapy treatments on a standard American diet. He's like, I couldn't get out of bed. It's just like a world of difference. And
Mm.
there's so many smart people out there, but Professor Thomas Seyfried, he's been talking about metabolic therapy for cancer for 30 years now. And Jeff is just following what he's saying, and it's changing his life forever. And Jeff opened up some other doors because I did a video with Jeff and Professor Seyfried, and kind of like you start getting these comments from other people, and thousands of comments at this point from people that have had similar success. And they're like, it's such a shame that people are diagnosed with terminal cancer or any type of cancer, and the only thing they're told is go do chemotherapy, and that's it. That's the best you could do. You don't have a plan, you don't have any hope, and there's nothing else you could do. And none of them ever mention nutrition. In fact, it was the
Mm.
opposite for Jeff. He went in for his chemotherapy treatment. They came around with cookies, and oh my goodness, he that fired him up more than anything. And he's like, I mean, this guy's got, he's on a journey to be cancer free with stage 4 cancer, but he's out there trying to educate and help people. That's how big of a heart he has and the energy he has. And he's like, carnivore, like, I feel like I'm 20 years old. I have so much energy. He's lost a whole bunch of weight. His mood's better. Um, and the chemotherapy is bearable where he could barely bear it before. So
Mm. That's awesome.
so many stories like that. I never thought cancer would be anything like that. But the thing that tears me up when I'm talking to Jeff is, I just said to him, I'm like, you're diagnosed with cancer. Did they tell you what was the cause of it? And he looked right in the camera and he said, I believe I caused my cancer. It's from the foods I was eating and the stresses I was putting on my body. Professor Seyfried says most cancers are just from chronic inflammation. And you can get chronic
Mm.
inflammation from smoking cigarettes or from coming in contact with toxins and things like that. But you can also get it from eating highly inflammatory food for decades and decades and decades. So that's been one of the big epiphanies for me on carnivore. It's like, I feel so good now, but I really have no worries for the future. If I get cancer or something, I'll deal with it when it happens, but I don't have the anxiety anymore to worry about it. And I
Mm.
really don't think I'm going to get some of those things just because I've eliminated that chronic inflammation from my body for forever. So I feel like the odds of that happening are so much less. And now there's more research coming out on Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff like chronic inflammation and having sugar for a long time leading to those things as well. So
Yeah, it's amazing what diet, just eating the correct diet's gonna do, right?
yeah,
It's crazy.
it's I try to simplify it. I'm like, I think it's just we're returning to what's natural for humans. We've gotten so far away from what's natural, mainly with the foods we're eating, but other things as well. Have you had any other changes with carnivore, like doing other activities? Like I know some people, myself included, I'm exercising. I never really did that before. I'm getting out in the sun, like doing weird stuff that I would have used to think like that's just some weird, crazy stuff, like grounding and things like that.
Yeah, so, uh, for me, like, I feel what happens when you go carnivore is you almost get to a point where you're compelled to exercise. Like your body is like, okay, it's time to move now. Come on, let's go. Let's move. And you feel good moving. Whereas before it was like, oh, I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Now it's like um, your body's telling you to move. And when you move, you feel good. And so I'm moving a lot more. I'm walking a lot more. When I run now, um, that kind of being compelled to move and feeling good when you do, coupled with the fact that I'm no longer arthritic or, my right side is better. Um, I'm running like I did when I was in high school. I don't get winded. I can just like run and run and run and run and run. And yeah, it's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, as far as the sunburn thing goes, I have to caveat this one. I was born in Scotland.
Mhm.
So so I'm naturally gonna be more sensitive to the sun. My sensitivity has improved, but I it has to be it still needs to be in small doses at this point, given that I can't go to the beach completely bare chested in front of the sun for like 8 hours or something and go, yeah, I'm gonna be fine. Yeah, but that's just Scottish genes more than anything.
Right. Yeah, that's fair enough. That's funny you mentioned that. I fired a bunch of people up. I did a post saying carnivores don't get sunburn, and ooh, that makes some people mad. It was like 50-50 though. It was like 50-50. Like 50% were like, I don't get sunburn anymore, it's carnivore. And the other like, you guys are all crazy, you're nuts. I'm like, it is interesting though, because a lot of skin conditions people fix on carnivores. So maybe whatever mechanism is behind that makes you less susceptible to
Oh,
burning more. I don't know what it is, but
I agree. And that's something I haven't mentioned. Like I don't have eczema anymore. And I used to have really bad flare-ups of eczema in winter, and because it's so dry, and it's gone. You know, I can have a hot shower and get out of that hot shower and not feel like, oh, I'm all itchy now and I'm gonna
Mhm.
be red and none of that anymore.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are your future goals and plans? Are you carnivore for life or?
I so I can't see any reason to go back. Um, and one of the reasons is I feel so good. And I've occasionally added a vegetable into my diet just to see what happens. And the pain in my knee comes back pretty much straight away.
Mm,
Um, and so judging by that, I can't imagine myself even going to keto just because, why would I risk it? But the other thing is this is probably the main reason I wouldn't go back to it. I just can't be bothered with all the thinking. I
right.
just don't have the time. I only eat one meal a day. I like getting up, making breakfast, enjoying that breakfast, and then it's just done. I don't have to think about it anymore. I'm more productive. I don't have stress like, "Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, what am I gonna eat? There's nothing in the house. I have to get, my big coat on because it's cold to go out and buy something." And there's none of that. It's just slap the food in the fry pan, fry it up. It's cooked, done, eat it. I'm good till tomorrow.
Mm, yeah. Same.
Mm.
100%. I you had mentioned earlier like enjoying the interviews you're doing with people. I almost wonder, it seems like I used to be kind of cynical with the carnivore coaching and the groups because I'm like, you just eat meat. Like, what do you need coaching for? But then I've since changed it because it feels like the carnivore community is pretty awesome. And whether it's doing interviews like you are with people or you're just watching YouTube videos and commenting, it seems like there's some really big value in talking to like-minded folks when we're living in a world of sugar and carbs and most people are doing kind of the opposite. Do you kind of feel that way too?
100%. And I think one kind of one kind of positive that's come out of the pandemic that we went through is that we can it's much more easy and comfortable for us to reach out to people who are on the other side of the world and talk to people on the other side of the world, like, maybe it wouldn't have been as comfortable as this, 4 years ago. But, yeah, I feel like there is a real value in being in the community, and, I think for me, that's the number one thing about being carnivore is this community.
Mhm.
And that's why, these interviews, the talking about carnivore, and I guess you're the same. I just can't stop doing it. It's like my wife will say something to me somewhat related to nutrition, and I'm like, no, 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 blah 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 blah, blah. And she's just like, oh, my, just yeah, I know you've got the answer. It's okay.
That's so funny. I was gonna ask you that. It's the same thing here. Carnivore's the answer to pretty much everything. The thing that drives my wife nuts is I don't know why I still do it, but I've constantly have carnivore content, your videos, other videos on the TV or on the computer, and it's like I don't have that many questions about carnivore anymore, but I still obsess and watch them all the time. I don't know, I just enjoy it. It's part of the community, I think too. But on the flip side of that question, have you had any sort of hate? It's one tough thing with YouTube sometimes is you get some crazy comments from time to time.
um, Yeah, I mean, YouTube does a good job of filtering that out, but I can't contain my curiosity to go and read some of it sometimes.
Right.
Um, it's not as bad as I thought it would be, but it does, like, you get the occasional person coming in calling you that's probably ethically vegan, or, calling you like an animal murderer or something like that, that kind of stuff. But, you know, the thing is, I always kinda look at it like, in real life, people could be thinking this about you anyway. They just don't say it because, of course, they're gonna get punched or something if they say it to your face, right?
Right.
But, people go through their life, whatever they're typing in comments, that's the kind of rubbish that's going on through their mind day to day. So it says more about them, but also it's like you can't control it.
Mhm.
So whatever, you know? It's like when I'm on Twitter and I see some of these pro statin doctors talking about, like, the way they talk to each other, it's like kids in a playground. And I kind of imagine doing a consultation with one of these doctors, and the patient's like, "Doctor, I've got this real problem. I've been having headaches lately." And the doctor's like, "Shh, hang on a second. Someone's shit talking me on Twitter. I've got to get back to them." It's like so yeah, the comments can get nasty and whatever, but yeah, I just think it's more about them than me, so whatever.
Yeah. That's a good point. It almost always seems like they're projecting something. I've overwhelmingly, the comments have been positive. Most of the bad ones are usually it seems like someone vegan or vegetarian saying I'm destroying animals. I
Mm,
I had an occasional one where they're like, "You're exaggerating your results," which I always found funny, like my weight ones, because I my weight I'm down 100 pounds since my heaviest. I lost most of it on carnivore, some of it on keto, but that was from a doctor's appointment. I legitimately have the doctor's records where he weighed me. So you go back to him. First of all, you shouldn't even bother, but I go back to them with the facts. Like, this is in my doctor's records with the date on it from my doctor if you want to see it. And then you just hear crickets all the time. But then I start asking myself too, like, I'm like, why am I even participating in this? It's just like I could choose in my brain to get upset about that or just let it go by, but it's probably just someone sadly that maybe they didn't have good results or they're projecting or one thing or another, who knows.
mm, mm, mm.
Overwhelmingly positive stuff though, definitely.
Yeah.
So, man, this has been awesome. I can't believe it's been almost an hour already. Uh Again, just huge shout out. Check out Dave's channel, go subscribe. I love what you're doing over there. Are you still, I guess I want to ask before I say this, but you're still looking for more folks to interview?
Oh, yeah, always. Yeah.
So,
Like, I've got people lined up, but I've got a lot of slots, so, I'm always happy for people to contact me, and I think, you know, being as we're talking about it, I think it bears mentioning, a lot of people kind of feel like I would like to do an interview, but my results aren't spectacular. Like, it's not losing 100 pounds, or it's not reversing this particular condition or whatever. I just feel better. And the important thing is, like, I'd love to hear from people like that as well, because those people, it's important to get the story out, because if we're going to convince people that this is the way they should be trying, at least giving a try to eating, we need to present a cross section of all stories that everyone can relate to. Because if I'm always doing the interviews with someone who's cured everything, and now they're competing in bodybuilding competitions or whatever it is, um, then there's always going to be people sitting at home going, yeah, but that's never going to work for me. The same as they would with any diet. They see someone who had good results on calorie restriction. It's like, yeah, but I've tried that. It doesn't work for me. So it's important to get everyone's message out there. And yeah, so I'd love to hear from anyone.
If someone wants to be interviewed on your channel, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
All they need to do is shoot me an email to realzerocarb@gmail.com.
Yeah. And I just want to second what Dave just said there. Do it. Just go do an interview. Like, everyone's story resonates with different people. So my story's not going to resonate with someone else. And I'll tell you what, you go on Dave's channel, you do the interview. Once you start seeing those comments come through, and they're going to say, Dave, you interviewed Lisa and she's just like me. And so I decided to do it. And when you get a comment like that, it could change someone's life forever.
Mm.
There's nothing more powerful than that. So yeah, I always encourage people. You got to it's like a rising tide lifts all ships. You got to elevate all the voices and get this message out. There's a lot of
Exactly.
hopeless people in the world, that don't have to be hopeless. And best way to inspire them is just sharing those real documented stories and examples. Look what worked for these people, and maybe it'll work for you too, sort of thing. So
Yeah, and just it bears consideration that we are making inroads doing this. You know, um, if we, like, say through this interview, if we influence one person to take on the diet, that has a big impact, because that one person might then go on to influence one more person, who could then go on to influence one or two more people, and it just grows like that. And all long term, you've got this compounding effect. It's like interest, I guess, or whatever, or investing. So we are having an impact, and the more voices that can be talking about it, the better.
100%. Yeah, that ripple effect just spreads and spreads. It seems like
Mm.
I don't know about you, but it seems like lately, the last couple months, it's just ready to just go crazy. It seems
Yeah,
like it's spreading like wildfire. The more and more people I'm hearing that are starting it up and having good success and talking about it more. So that's exciting. Good stuff. Thank you so much, Dave. This has been great. Again, I encourage everyone, check out Dave's channel. I'll have a link in the description below. Go over, do an interview with him, share what he's doing, subscribe, elevate his voice for sure. Really appreciate you, Dave. Thanks a lot.
thanks for having me on, Kerry. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let's start this off. Let's just start it off. I'm going to start it off the way Dave Mack starts it off. I love how you start your interviews. Can you tell me how you found carnivore?